Good day, awesome moms. Welcome to the Momentum Motherhood Hub. In this hub, we equip mothers emotionally, mentally, and spiritually for the role of motherhood. We believe that mothers play such a crucial role in shaping the next generation, so they must be equipped with skills to play this important role effectively. My name is Judy Tukagu, and I'm the founder of the Momentum Motherhood Hub. Each week, we explore various topics that can help us as mothers become better versions of ourselves. Today, we're discussing transgenerational trauma and how mothers can break the cycle. Trust me, this topic can change the trajectory of your family. We're going to start by listening to Dr. Gabo Mate, a leading voice in the subject of trauma. He is a medical practitioner and he has done a lot of research in this area. He'll be sharing with us what trauma is and its impact. Listen and learn.
It's just that the way it worked is that trauma is transmitted transgenerationally, but that's not to blame anybody. And it's really important to remove blame because parents feel so guilty already. Parents with kids who have challenges, believe me, I've been one of them. There's a tremendous sense of guilt, which is entirely unwarranted and undeserved, and it doesn't even help. So let's just agree that the trauma does come through us, but we don't do it as such.
That is incredibly helpful way to think about it. When you said that it's pain moving through you.
Yeah.
That made my shoulders drop.
Mm.
How do you define trauma, particularly for somebody who isn't aware whether or not they've experienced it?
The way I define it is very straightforward. Trauma comes from a Greek word for wound or wounding, so trauma is a wound. It's a psychological wound in this case. Could be a physical wound, but here we're talking about psychological wounds. The important distinction to make is that trauma is not what happened to you. It's what happened inside of you as a result of what happened to you. So in my case, my trauma wasn't that my mother gave me to a stranger. The trauma was the wound, which is that I perceive myself as not wanted. I perceive myself as abandoned. Who gets abandoned? Somebody who doesn't deserve to be loved. So then I developed this sense of not being good enough, not being lovable enough. Now that means I spent much of my life trying to prove that I'm good, that I'm lovable, that I am important, which then drives all kinds of behaviors, which then create more problems. But the trauma is not the event. That's the traumatic episode, but the trauma is the wound that happens inside you. So if I get a blow on the head, that's not the trauma. The trauma is the concussion that I developed.
Now, in that case, it's physical. And I want to kind of hover here because for a long time, I just assumed trauma was something that happened to people who were at war or were in a country that was occupied by, a fascist government or country coming in like your parents were and that you were. Or somebody that was the victim of a violent crime. I never understood that experiences that may seem insignificant on the surface, somebody's mood, somebody criticizing you, feeling left out, that these are things that can also leave a mark, just like a blow to a head can actually leave a concussion. And I would love for you to explain to us what actually is a psychological wound. Because one of the things that I see happening a lot is people either shame themselves for being stuck, or they say, I'm just too emotional, or I should just get over it. And there is something deeper that you mean when you say it's a psychological wound. So,
well, that self-talk, that negative self-talk that you just articulated is itself a psychological wound. It's a sign of psychological wound. It's a sign of self-rejection, which is one of the deepest impacts of trauma, is that people traumatized, they develop a shame-based view of themselves. So they begin to think that there's something wrong with them. That itself is a wound. Now, when you talked about seemingly insignificant things, we have to make a distinction here. There are what we call the big T traumatic events. Those have been well studied: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse of children, neglect, a parent being addicted, a parent dying, a parent being jailed, violence in the family, a rancorous divorce, a parent being mentally ill, to which we need to add social factors such as poverty or racism. These are big T traumatic events that can wound kids, and we can talk about the ways in which that happens. But you can also wound kids not by doing bad things to them that you shouldn't, but by not doing the good things that they need. In other words, children have certain needs. A human child is born with certain evolution-determined needs. Those children whose needs are not met that way, for example, for unconditional loving acceptance, and I'm not talking about the parent's love, I'm talking about the capacity of the parent to unconditionally accept the child and to see the child.
What do you mean when you say unconditional acceptance? Because I think most of us, it's revelatory to hear, no, there's a biological hardwired need that you have as a child to feel unconditional acceptance and safety from the adults around you and in your environment. And if you do not feel that way, it creates a response inside your body. There is a reaction to that. But most of us, I think we even just skip over that fact, Gabor, that there's a fundamental need that a child has to feel accepted. And so what does that mean, if you could unpack it for us?
Sure. Children get to experience and see themselves the way they are seen by the adults. So if a child gets emotional and they get criticized, then there's nothing wrong with their emotions. If a child is very sensitive and they're told, don't be so sensitive, they think there's something wrong with them. If a young toddler is behaving a certain way, and the parent thinks that the way to correct this is to punish the child, then the child is just being a 2-year-old. Then the child begins to believe that there's something wrong with them, and they have to compensate for that by meeting the parents' expectations. So now the acceptance is no longer unconditional. I'll accept you if you look this way, talk this way, behave this way. And then all your life, you'll be worried about how do people see you. That's a sign of a childhood wound, because fundamentally, we need to be connected to ourselves. And when parents don't see us, we don't see ourselves. That's just a fact. And if you look at human evolution, we didn't evolve under the conditions that kids are raised now. We evolved under conditions for millions of years until 15,000 years ago, living in small communities where there were many adults. It takes a village to raise a child. The kids were always with the parents. There was no separation. Kids were carried everywhere. They were not put down to let them cry it out. They were just unconditionally accepted and not punished, actually, not hit. It's a totally different paradigm of parenting. That's how we evolved.
That was Dr. Gabor Mate as he shared with us about trauma. I'm sure you learned something from that clip. Mothers, it is so important for us to begin to look inwards and recognize our patterns and behaviors so that we don't continue to replicate the same issues that we had in the lives of our children. Many of us, the way we respond to things, the way we behave, if you look closely, you will find that is exactly the way your mom or your dad was actually also responding to things. And they have passed these things on to you. But you have the responsibility, because you're listening to me today and you're becoming aware. You have the responsibility to take ownership of your emotional responses, your words, your reactions, so that you don't replicate the same pattern. Some of us grew up with parents who were yellers. Some of us grew up with parents who were very angry and aggressive. Some of us grew up with parents who were verbally abusive. And those actions created an emotional wound in us. And the truth is that if you don't find healing for those wounds, if you don't take responsibility to, just let go of the consequences of those actions, you will find yourself repeating the same pattern. So, just like Dr. Mate shared with us, trauma can be healed. Trauma can be resolved. And it starts with you recognizing your patterns. It starts with you being compassionate and kind to yourself and realizing that it is not your fault and that you are not damaged. Now that you are an adult, you have what it takes to begin to change those patterns. You may not have been responsible for what happened to you in childhood, but now you're responsible for your actions so that your relationship with your husband can get better, your relationship with your children can get better, so that you don't transfer what you received from your parents or your grandparents to your children. Mothers, we are committed in Momentum Motherhood Hub to equipping you with the knowledge you need to be a better person. That's why we are here. That's why Momentum Motherhood Hub was set up, to equip you with the knowledge to take better decisions and better actions that can influence your generation positively. So as you listen to me today, take time, study your patterns, study your emotional response, study your behavior. Ask, why do I behave this way? Why do I react this way? Begin to ask yourself those questions. Look back at your childhood and look at how you handle things, which mirrors the same way your parents handle things, and begin to take action today to change the negative patterns. I want to use this opportunity to invite you to the coaching program, to our Momentum Motherhood coaching program. In this coaching program, we dive deeper into the subject of trauma and help mothers to actually begin to walk out of whatever trauma has held them bound in the past. So I encourage you today, join us. And as you do, your life will not remain the same. Trust me on that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next week as we learn more about trauma and how mothers can overcome. Thank you.